Hi, BWW community. This is Michelle Jackson again with the book of the week. And this week's book is called The Financial Decision Making by Dennis Martin, who's also one of our book members, our author members. And he's here to talk about his book. And we're just going to learn a little bit about money management, which is a very, very important topic, especially during this time of COVID-19. And so, Dennis, let's get to know you a little bit more and learn more about your book.
Thanks again for having me, Michelle. It's a great opportunity. First of all, I'd like to wish you a happy belated birthday. I realized yesterday was your birthday.
Yes.
And I also want to salute, this is Memorial Day. I want to remember all our service members who died protecting our country. They'll never be forgotten.
Yes.
But thanks again for having me. My name is Dennis Martin, or Dr. Dennis Martin. My first book, officially my first book, I say Financial Decision Making, was released in February. I consider myself a financial professional, retired Army finance officer. I'm an adjunct professor here. I teach financial decision making courses in the DMV area, District of Columbia, Maryland, Virginia. Spent a lot of time working with financial institutions. Been on a board of a credit union for about 12 years. I held a free position as chair of a supervisor committee and asset and liability committee. And I'm originally from Alabama, and I love talking about finance. I love helping our minority community, especially disenfranchised areas. Actually, the reason I did write a book was because my dissertation was on financial literacy and the financial decision making in underserved community. So just a little Southern country boy from Alabama who happened to have a book.
Oh, wow. Wait a minute. I'm just a Southern girl from Alabama who just happened to write books too. So, Alabama, we're putting it on the map right now. That's a good thing. So once again, the book of the week is Financial Decision Making by Dennis Martin. And we're going to talk about his publishing process. We're going to talk about what he's experienced as a writer. Being a first-time writer, I know it's tough. A lot of things to learn, a lot of hurdles to overcome. But before we get to the publishing part and the marketing part and all that cool stuff, let's talk about money. Because I think it's important that we do that. I think it's important as African Americans. I think it's important as Americans. I read just a few days ago that 40% of Americans, 40% would have to take out a loan in order to meet the needs of a $1,000 expense. Would have to take out a loan or a credit card to meet the needs of a $1,000 expense. That means that 40% of Americans may not have $1,000 in savings. That's a reality. And that's a big reality. And it's something that, many of us, we've lived through it. We may have had our own financial challenges and moved through it to a better place. And some of us are still there. But it's something we don't talk enough about. So when I read your book, what I thought about was 22-year-old Michelle. And 22-year-old Michelle graduated from the University of Alabama, came out of school with $19,000 worth of debt. And this wasn't student loan debt. This was hang out, buy nice clothes, debt. And when I left college, I left for high school, going to college, my father told me not to get a credit card. That was the first nice advice he gave me about money that was really essential, but I did the complete opposite. I went and got a credit card. So 4 years later, I've got $19,000 worth of debt, and I am trying to figure out how to pay it down. Now, the reality is I have people coming to me, and I grew up in public housing. We didn't have a lot, but I had people saying to me, you've got this debt, just file bankruptcy, okay? And, and that was something that I heard a lot. Just file bankruptcy, and I knew I didn't want to do that. So what I decided to do is to get into a consumer credit counseling program, which I'm not even sure if those programs even still exist. But it was new at the time, and they consolidated your debt and they helped you pay it down. And I was like, wow, I'm $19,000 behind where I need to be at this point in my life. I'm graduating college. I should be jumping into this new career, but instead, I'm trying to figure out how to pay this debt down because I made a lot of money mismanagement decisions. I mismanaged that money. Now, 30 years later, everything is fine, credit's perfect, all that. But to get from 22-year-old Michelle to now took a lot of lessons. one of the lessons that it was that I remember getting my first car and my car interest was 18% because my credit was bad. That's a hard pill. I remember the Nissan guy looking at me and saying, ma'am, the best thing you're going to do for yourself is to pay this off early. Otherwise, you're just going to pay out an enormous amount of interest. But those were the consequences of my poor decision making when it came to money. So with what you learned in all your career working with money from the credit union side to the Army side, speak to 22-year-old Michelle and give her a couple of things that she could have done to avoid the money mismanagement habits that she picked up early. And then let's talk a little bit about how your book can help people through this COVID, how your book can help people like me at that age, and how your book can help people who are within that 40% that may not have $1,000 in savings.
Well, Michelle, thanks for that overview of yourself. I was very fortunate. I'm glad you're not in that situation now. I would tell you, first of all, finance is such a private topic, especially in the minority communities. And we have to look at the root cause of why some of these things happen. Financial decision making, I teach this on a corporate level, MBA level, and everybody forget about the basics sometimes. As we go off, we see and we want what we want. We want it now. Everybody have had financial difficulties. Some people just do not like to talk about it. And I'm glad you brought out a lot of things that's going on in a lot of different communities, not just in the African-American communities, but other communities also, the resources. But as we go back to what I would tell you, first, I would hopefully would love for everyone to have some type of financial literacy in school, because that's where the key starts. This is a continuous thing of educating everyone about finance. Even if you read my book, it's a continuous thing. It's not a one-time thing. It's a continuous, because consumers, the retailers are as much money as the government spend a lot of money on financial literacy, but where do they spend that money? It's not in the minority communities. It's usually in communities where already the taxes and the schools already have a lot of great things going on. So first of all, we got to get the root cause into our communities. We got to get our parents, because the first time you learn about finance probably is from your parents. And if your parents don't know, they don't teach it in school. I'm a finance major. They don't teach it in college, not personal one-on-one finance. So I hate to say it, some of this is probably by design, because there's a lot of lobbyists for retailers, for a lot of credit providers who pay a lot of money to keep certain things not in the open. And yes, it's in the fine print, but who really read the fine print? So we got to educate ourselves. So we got to come back to our communities first, whether it's our mayors reaching out to financial literacy centers or banks or credit unions, or our churches, our pastors, our aldermen, our councilmen, someone bringing that to the community. But the problem is, a lot of us don't want to expose what you just exposed, or how bad off we really are doing. We want to look good. We want to have a nice car, a nice home, but no one's, as you say, $1,000. People don't have that money. You have to go get a payday loan. So to learn that, the root cause is, as much information as we tell our younger generation, do not get a credit card. If they have an opportunity and they haven't been told or hadn't been educated or hadn't been laid out on paper that 18% interest, do you realize if you just wait and get your credit a little better, that 18% interest, you could be paying, say for a $20,000 car, you're paying $10,000 extra in interest when I may could only be paying $3,000. You have to show people, they have to see it. You have to get them involved with going to the banks. I think parents have to get involved with showing our younger generation where the money is going, that they have to pay electricity, they have to pay bills, food, you have to pay clothing, you have to pay transportation, if you want cable, if you need cable, and really looking at what is mandatory and what is necessary. Because a lot of times everyone want to reward our younger generation or our family members, but realizing you may not have the money, and it's okay to explain to them, son or daughter, I just don't have the money. We got to make sure we eat. We got to make sure we have clothes. We got to make sure you got medical expenses. You're talking about COVID-19. Another study out, and this, I'm not even thinking about the drawback we're going to get from COVID-19. A lot of people going to the hospital. Guess what? Eventually going to happen after that? A hospital bill.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't pay a bill, what about when that hospital medical bill? The average person now, they have a serious illness, say cancer or whatever. In about 2 years, they are bankrupt because your insurance is only going to pay, say, $22 a day or $25 a day when that hospital bill is $75. Where their extra money is. So when you talk about financial decision making and saving and prioritize, let's not save and prioritize just for that vacation, that new car, that retirement home. What about our health for medical insurance? So I would tell the person is at 22 and you're in debt to really look at your mandatory costs. Try to get with a financial institution or community or a program that can teach you something about finance and really look at, understanding how credit work. And like I said, a lot of programs are out there. They got a lot of things online now, but we got to be vetting those services because everybody is not looking out for your best interests. So it's kind of hard when you're already in debt, but there are a lot of services that can help you. And getting your credit report annually. You can get a copy of your credit report annually and review it and work with your creditors. It's okay to call your creditors and say, hey, can I work out some type of plan instead of working with a credit repair service and paying them $100 a month? So it's a lot of things we can do on our own. I talk about a lot of it in my book. We talk about savings. We talk about budgeting. We talk about credit. We talk about financial institutions. And I got that in order because we got to save before we can really start budgeting. And we got to, before we start really talking about financial investing. And we probably talk about it a little later on. Everybody wants to see my book. They want to talk about investing. I said, well, should you really be maxing out your 401k or TSP and you don't have an emergency plan? Should you really be putting that money aside? But we can talk about it a little later too.
It's funny you said that because I thought about breaking this up into 2 sessions, and maybe we will do that because I do think that is a very interesting conversation. I love money. I love talking about money because I've come the full, I've gone from the messing up my credit to, my next step in life. I was a banker. I was a banker for South Trust Bank. That's now, Wells Fargo. From that, I was also a senior partner of an investment club in Birmingham with 8 African-American women. And we were in the paper a number of times because we were outperforming the other larger investment firms. I was a senior partner for that club, and we invested in stocks and mutual funds, and we did exceedingly well. So I learned a big lesson by making mistakes. And I'm okay with that because I think, like you said, we don't talk about it enough. Yeah. And it's important that we talk about it. And it's important that you put together a book like the one you have, because it talks about some of the basics, budgeting. My husband and I have had a budget for 17 years. Excel spreadsheet. We've had it for 17 years. We log everything. I learned something in this process of getting my credit back in order, and that is to pay yourself first, to set aside money so that you can do the things that you need to do and have fun with it. And then you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul, which is what a lot of us end up doing. So, we do that and we continue to do it. And some people wouldn't at this point, but we do because you want to see your money. You want to be able to see what you have and make sure that you're taking care of your debt the way you need to. We don't carry a lot of debt. And so it has been very, very beneficial for us to do that. So when you wrote your book, and I got a chance to read it, I was excited about it because I've been thinking about starting an investment club again. I've been thinking about a lot of different elements, especially getting into the schools and teaching our kids about financial literacy. Yes. I have a youth entrepreneurship program, and there is a financial literacy component to it. And so it is so important that, as readers and as writers, that we understand that creating a self-help book like yours and like so many others, whether it's finance, religion, relationship, love, you're putting your heart and soul out there to let people know what they need to know to have a better life. I mean, that's just bottom line. There's nothing selfish about it, This type of writing, I've heard people say, well, I can't write about that topic because I'm not an expert. Well, what is that? Does that
Yeah.
mean, what does an expert look like? Does it look like someone like me who's been there, done that, and had to overcome it? Is it somebody like you who's gotten degrees and have worked in it? What does it look like? Sometimes, we have to understand that sometimes we need to put the work out there,
Yes.
so that people can can really see the path to something better. And in my life, I have leaned on self-help books like yours. I've leaned on financial books like yours. I've leaned on relationship books and religious books because those things have given me some insight. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, let's talk about the publishing process. What was this like for you to write this book and publish it?
I would tell you, it's definitely probably one of the second hardest thing I ever done. The first, of course, was doing my dissertation, graduated from graduate school, and the original goal was to turn my dissertation into a book, but it was very technical, and it talked about financial decision making. And the premise of this book came because as I went around the country, Alabama, North Carolina, Virginia, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and I worked with a lot of minority Black-owned churches. And I did seminars about savings, about budgeting, did questionnaires. I interviewed a lot of people. And the conflict, as you talk about subject matter expert or senior people and what our community need or thought was important and what some senior personnel who you would call subject matter expert thought was important, it was a big gap. But the bottom line is turning to that financial decision making was a needed, and they needed a lot of things that a lot of people was not providing. So as I looked at not turning to the dissertation, I had a coach, Dr. Lisa Banks. I went to an executive leadership program with her back in 2012. She wrote a few books, and she helped me through this process. So it's a lot of different ways. You look at self-help, you look at self-publishing. I was actually grateful to have a friend and a coach to help me with this process. And as we talked about just writing, so I actually looked at, when I did my seminars for my dissertation, the questions that I asked during that seminars into all of these different areas. And I decided I got so many questions afterwards about savings, about budgeting, a lot about investing later on, a lot about financial institutions, knowing the difference between a bank and a credit union. One is voluntarily ran in a sense of their board members, one is not. Reason credit unions have lesser rates. So it's some of the basic things. And my subtitle of my book, Understanding Your Option, almost became my title because that was the real premise of everybody don't know the options. There's a lot of options out there, but people just don't know. So as I went through this publishing process of writing, first of all, you got to have thick skin. And the reason I say that, because if you let somebody review it, you got to really understand what they're looking at and make sure that you're writing in your own voice and your whole message is still being presented in the way you want it to be. You have to understand, as you talk about self-publishing, you can't put it all in one book.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your help too, for after reviewing and looking at the book, because everyone want to know about the next item.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this is a foundational book. My next book, maybe a spoiler alert, may be about the investing. But first, you got to get down to saving and budgeting before you can start talking about investing. So it's a series here I'm looking at building. But going through, looking at Amazon, looking at different like 48 hours for publishing your book, getting your cover, getting your picture, marketing. As you know, it's a process. And I probably took a good 8 to 9 months at least before I could even think about putting it together in a format. And I think even kind of like remind me when I was doing my dissertation, once you think you're finished, it's always something else. And I think you even mentioned it in your previous interview with the lady last week, that it never can be finished because you always think it's something else you can add or another edit. But at some point you got to say, hey, I think this is the best I can do right now. And let me put it out there and let me see how it works. Mm-hmm. But it was a great process. I had, like I said, a coach. Kind of like I remember during my dissertation process, get help. Don't try to do it all on your own. You can self-publish. I think me and you discussed, I actually put my book on Amazon, but I use another publishers. It's different ways you can let one organization do everything, or you can mix and mingle and you can mail or ship your own merchandise. So you have to look at a lot of different avenues, especially when you look at pricing. As we talk about financial decision making, when you're pricing your book, what books are out there similar, what's Amazon charging or another industry, what they charging, and making sure you can make a profit if that's your whole idea of making money. So it's a lot that goes through this publishing process, and it was great. Can't wait to probably about another year to start on the next one, but it was definitely a great process.
Well, that's good. I think your book came out in an ideal time when everything, with COVID is hitting the scene, and you've got, over 30 million people unemployed. There's just so much happening in the world, and we're going to see the fallout and consequences of this over the next couple of months and years. And there are going to be a lot of people turning to people. I mean, they're already turning to you, I know, asking questions, what do I do? And that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to talk about investing and things like that in this call, because to me, that's next level. A couple of years ago, I got asked to speak at Essence Festival about investing and getting, helping small businesses get investments, which is a lot of work that I did when I was in the state of Maryland. And I remember, going through my slides and thinking, before we even get here, my first thing is get your credit right. Like, build a network of people who will get credit. I mean, really, because this idea that you're going to go in a bank as an African-American person, very honestly, with, look at the data, and you get a loan to start a business, it doesn't happen a lot.
Yes.
Not as much as people think. To think that you're going to get funds from venture capitalists and things like that, it doesn't happen a lot. And that's just not for African-American companies, it's just for any startup company.
Yes.
So you're going to get that first $5,000 out of your account. And if you don't have $5,000, you're going to go to your friends or your family, and you're going to ask them. So if your credit is bad, their credit is bad, and everybody else in your environment's credit is bad, it's hard to support someone's dreams.
Yes.
When you start off like that. So it's such a, let's talk about the basics. I think I want to do this again with you, and just continue to talk about budgeting, and then next one, talk about investing, because I love investing. I mean, this is a great time to invest.
It is.
There's some great stocks out there. And, and so that is definitely a conversation, but to start, let's deal with the basics. And so once again, I just wanted to thank you for coming on, for your book.
Thank you.
I encourage everyone to go out and pick up a copy. And if you're interested in getting the book, go to the BWW page, hit the topic, the BWW promotion book topic, and you will see a link to Dr. Martin's author page. You can buy directly from him. So let's support each other. Let's get this done. Let's handle our money so we can come through. We can be resilient during these times, because that's important. And let's learn how to manage our money well. So thank you so much, Dr. Martin. I love saying that, Dr. Martin. And take care, okay?
A great one. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.